Hello and welcome to Unleashed, the show that explores how to thrive as an independent professional. Unleashed is produced by Umbrex, and I'm your host, Will Bachman. I'm here today with Rob Lachenauer, who is the co-author of the Family Business Handbook published by Harvard Business Review. I guess the full title would be the Harvard Business Review Family Business Handbook: How to Build and Sustain a Successful, Enduring Enterprise. Rob's a former BCG partner, and I'm so excited to speak with him. Rob, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Will. I look forward to the conversation.
All right, so I am really excited to hear all about this world of family businesses. And, a lot of members, a lot of listeners of this show may from time to time be serving a family-owned business. And, it's not something that we necessarily, got trained at McKinsey or Bain or BCG or Booz or wherever else folks, got their training before. And when you and I were chatting before the show, it's not just necessarily the local lawn and garden store or the pizza franchise in your area, which are fine businesses, right? We can be talking about, $100 million, billion-dollar businesses can be family-owned businesses. Tell me about, first, a little bit about your background. You run a consulting firm, Banyan Global. Tell me a little bit about your firm and your background and kind of the research that lies behind this book that you wrote.
Yes, Will, I'll do that. So a little bit of my background first, and then I'll go into Banyan and then family business. So I was, if I look back on my career, I was kind of groomed to be a steely-eyed capitalist. I worked for PepsiCo, really aggressive place. I went to Harvard Business School, West Point of Capitalism, went to BCG, which I think is the leader in corporate strategy and like winning in the marketplace. At BCG, I wrote a book, Hardball. Are you playing to play or playing to win? 7 strategies to trounce your competition. And I was about 40 and everything was just going great. But then we had our third daughter. And I was like, oh my God, can I be a great BCG partner and a great dad at the same time? And the answer to me, not to everybody, but the answer to me was no. And I needed to get onto a different track. So I left BCG, started a couple companies, actually in the material science space, which was super fun. Left the second one and then eventually founded Banyan. I found that I really like advising and consulting, and I missed it. And the co-author of Hardball introduced me to this market of family businesses. So about 10 years ago, Josh Barron and a few other people and I started this company we call Banyan Global Family Business Advisors. And our business is to advise some of the world's leading family businesses. And what's different about advising family businesses versus corporations is the owners in family businesses are people. And it's not like, Fidelity Magellan Fund owns the company and they'll sell it if the total shareholder return isn't what it's supposed to be. It's really these are owners who are thinking about not only the business today, this quarter, but what their business will be for their next generation. So the challenges that you'll have if you're advising these firms will be very different. You have to think about the individual. So there's a lot in there. We can unpack it however you would like to.
Great. So you have served, I think you told me, over 200 different family-owned businesses. One phrase that you mentioned before was we often think about what's the business model for a firm, but you told me that you also think about what's the owner model when you're talking to family-owned businesses. Unpack that term for me a bit.
Yeah. An owner model means the decisions you need to make as an owner that will really impact whether you'll be successful or not. So let me there are 5 big ones we talk about in the book, but I'll just point to 3 right now. One is we call it how do you design ownership? And what that means is, you could be an LLC, an S Corp, a C Corp, a lot of different ways. When I started Banyan and some other companies, I really didn't know what I was doing about ownership type. And you go to a lawyer and he says, oh, you should be an S corporation. Okay, I'll be an S corporation. We kind of fill in the forms and go. We don't think you should do it that way. You should think very carefully about who will have the right to be an owner in your firm? Is it going to be just you? Is it going to be you and your partner? Is it going to be you and 12 partners? What does it mean to leave the partnership, if it is indeed a partnership? Do you have to sell your shares, or do you just buy out the person? How you set up that design of ownership will have a lot to do with the success. A lot of the conflict you'll find in family businesses and non-family businesses, which are privately held, is because it wasn't designed the right way. The second thing you have to think about, we call decide. It's interesting, but a small company with a few owners, the owners have the right to determine who makes what decisions. As an owner of a firm, you have the right to make every decision. You can decide the color of the carpet. You can decide if you go into the Indian market, yes or no. When you grow, you have a decision about, do you still make all of the decisions, or do you start delegating some decisions and then retaining others? It's really important to be very explicit, especially as you grow, which which decisions you will retain and which you will give away. If you retain too many, your staff will say, I've got no latitude, no decision authority, and you're at risk at leaving. The third big thing going on in your owner model is, it was so interesting working at BCG. It was a given that the objective function of the company was total shareholder return, which is stock price up and down plus dividends. That's what everyone was really focused on. There are great measures, and everyone had that in mind. It's not true in privately held companies, especially family businesses. There are actually three things that they're trading off. One is growth of value, similar to TSR. The other is liquidity, meaning you could say, I'm going to keep all the money in the company so I grow, baby, grow. Or you could say, I'm going to take it out because I have other things. I want a house in the Cape or whatever it's going to be. And the third thing in this triangle, which is as important, is control. Do you want to control the whole thing? Do you want to bring debt or other equity partners in? And if you do, that maybe will help you grow it. But if you give up that kind of control, then how you run the business, which could be, I really want to have a flat hierarchy or a steep hierarchy, you would give away a lot of that control. So what's interesting in an owner model is there are all these big decisions that you need to make. And if you make them explicitly and well, you've got a chance to succeed. If you just don't make them or make them poorly, we think getting your owner model wrong is as dangerous as getting your business model wrong.
You have a section in the book about family employment policy, and there's a lot of pretty juicy sections in there. I'd love you to talk, attracting talent to the family. How do you plan family career paths? How do you set pay for family members? How do you think about an exit plan if they're not the greatest? So tell me a little bit about, and I guess on the one hand, you want to have the best talent possible in the company, but then also if eventually you want family members to run the company, you need them to work in the company for a while. So tell me just talk to me a little bit about, family members working in the business.
It's one of the hardest things to do right in a family business is to employ your own family members. I know because I hired, just as an intern, our middle daughter. She was going into college, and I think of myself as a decent manager. But when Ellie was there, everyone in the firm said, Rob, you're focusing on your daughter, not on us. And I'm like, no, I'm not. They saw everything that was going on in my mind. It's just a microcosm of the problems of having a family member in your business. And what we see in family-run firms, there are many good practices, but in this case of pulling your family members into your firm, we see many, frankly, bad practices going on where we have this Brazilian conglomerate we work with, and they brought one of their next generation members into the company, and they said, okay, on Wednesday, we'd like you to go to this sugar beet factory. This gentleman, next generation family member, went to the sugar beet factory. Nobody knew he was coming. He was like, I'm here. And they're like, who are you? It's a really tricky thing. A lot of times what will happen is if you have, say, three brothers that own a family business, they will hire their next generation, daughters and sons, into their function. So if you have one gentleman who runs manufacturing, they'll all grow up in the manufacturing area. If another one runs sales and marketing, they'll grow up in sales and marketing, not getting the kind of exposure to all of the parts of the business that you need to actually be a good leader and maybe future owner. So we saw this was going on. This was about 10 years ago. We're like, this doesn't make sense to us. There must be a better way. And another former BCG partner and I sat down together. We said, BCG is really good at this, like attracting, retaining great talent. So what we did, and you'll see in the book, there's this matrix where we go from attracting to enter to compensation to evaluate. We said, how does BCG do it? Well, they have this process of these 6 things that they go through to attract and retain, and then eventually get rid of great talent. We set up that same kind of process. And then we said, here are the options that you have, family businesses, for how to do it within a family-run business. And there are good ways to do it, and we point to some of those in the book.
What are some of those practices? Because I imagine you want to attract the talent, right? But you probably don't want everybody to make it feel like the boss's son or boss's daughter gets all this favoritism. But you do need to move them around. You do need to promote them faster than other employees if you eventually want them to be like the C-level people. So what are some of the good practices?
I think the simplest way to say it is merit with supplement. So let me describe what I mean by that. Sometimes a next generation family member will come in and they're coddled up to the top. They're not given really direct good feedback by their managers, because they know that manager knows someday that gentleman, he's going to be my boss and the owner. So they really softball feedback. And I believe that strong developmental feedback is the most essential thing to getting better, but they don't get it. What best business practice is usually, not always with these family businesses, is if a family member comes in and there's a whole discussion whether they should or not, but let's assume that they're there, you should have a merit-based system, which basically means you should rise to the top to do as high as your abilities allow you. Now, if you're not getting, as a family member, the support that you need by feedback and 360 reviews, that's where the supplement comes in. Usually great family businesses will have not only the direct supervisor of that family member doing their review, they'll also have either a coach or, say, a board member also looking after the development of that person, so that they're getting some supplemental feedback and supplemental career planning to get to the highest and best use that they can get to.
Do you recommend that, when you're advising, owners of these businesses, do you recommend that they have their sons or daughters first, maybe after business school, go work somewhere else? Like, go work at Goldman Sachs or BCG or something for a couple years and then join us, or just
we do Will, that of the best practices within family businesses, it is that you should not come in as a next generation directly into your family business. You need to know what it's like not to be special. You need to know that you're just a normal employee in a non-family business. You should spend 2 to 5 years outside of the family business, as one of our clients says, getting your butt kicked and just knowing what it is to have a career where you're not a family member. That will enable you to perform much better and be, frankly, much more empathetic with the non-family members in the business.
All right. You mentioned earlier, you touched on sort of the design aspects of the ownership. What are some different, one thing I'm curious about is, let's say that you have, like you said, 3 brothers who have a business, and then maybe the next generation, maybe the kids of 2 of the brothers are going to be active in the business, but one of the brothers doesn't have any, let's say the kids want to go off and do something else. How typically, what's the best practice for, passing down ownership? Should the non-active members, have as much control over the business as the people who are really in it, or should they have like non-voting shares, or should they be forced to sell, or what do the best companies do to handle that kind of situation?
At BCG, we talked a lot to our clients about best practices, and I believe there are many good practices, or best practices in pricing strategies or things like that. We don't believe that there is a best practice for ownership. It is set actually much more by the context of the family and what the family wants. What's different here is that the owners are people, right? And you need to know, as these owners, or if you're advising these owners, you need to know what they want. It could be that next generation of people don't want to be directly involved in the business. They don't want to work in the business, but they do want to be owners. Now, is that okay? Yes, there are hundreds of families, probably thousands of family businesses where the next generation aren't the owner operators. They are what we call either governors, meaning they work at the board level, or they're just investors in the business and less involved than board members. That's okay. There are many very successful family businesses that have a rule that no family member can work in the business. But if you do that, there are all these compensating mechanisms you have to set up in your family business system so that that next generation is both emotionally tied to the business and also knows enough to be a really great director or board director of the business. So it's tough. It's the best practice, I would have to say, is knowing helping the owners get to know what they want and showing the implications of those wants, and then options then to come and get what they want. It's so interesting. I really think that, so at BCG, we used to say, it's so different advising management than it is advising owners. With management, you'd go in and you'd say, okay, client, you should do A, B, C because of D, E, F. And why? Well, BCG knows this stuff, so this is what you should do. Owners don't want that. Advising owners is very different. There's no agency effect. It's all about them. They can't go blame anyone else. The decision is on them. You want them to make the decision. So in advising owners, you want to show them options so they make the choice rather than a full singular recommendation. Does that make sense, Will?
It does. What do you see as some families doing, maybe as the second or even third generation comes along, of making sure that the family kind of continues to know each other and is connected? Do businesses do some kind of family picnic day where they all get together and then get sort of a day long of seminars or briefings on what's going on, or also play games, or to kind of keep in touch with each other? Because you need to know each other better than just an ordinary family that gets together for the holidays or whatever, if you're going to be acting also as a board of directors, right?
You're exactly right. So that's in family businesses, as you go across generations, the first generation is the founding generation, and it's usually one person and a great entrepreneur. The next generation, you have a sibling partnership. So, three sisters are owning the business together. The experience of growing up together is formative of their relationship. So they are close or far apart given that relationship. The third generation, however, if it's staying in the family, they would be something called a cousin consortium. And a sibling partnership has certain issues, often rivalry, who's the top dog of the siblings. Cousins have this issue, which you're talking about, which is they've grown up, their life experiences are different. Maybe this one grew up not that wealthy because the wealth is in the other branches. They don't share the same life experiences. So if you want that family business to stay together, you need to create experiences, especially in the teenage and 20 years, that they get to know each other and they have shared experiences. Many of our families will have maybe a family house that all the branches will come back to, or at least they have what they call a family assembly, which would be a weekend or two across the year where the family would come together both for having fun and having experiences as a family and to learn about the business and make some of the important decisions together. And if you don't do that, your families will drift apart, and either the whole business would be sold or parts of the family, some branches of the family would stay together in the business and others would leave, which is not a problem. If they want to leave the business, owners can want what they want. But it's a decision that if you want a perpetuating family business, all of our clients will do a big family assembly and have something they call a family council. A family council is a group of the family members who are looking after two things. One is building the unity of the family, and the other is making decisions on how the next generation should be developed to be part of the family business.
Does your firm help with those family assemblies? I mean, I imagine that's almost a subspecialty in itself of making those be an effective, fun, but educational, powerful weekend.
We do. We do that. There are many other firms that are out. A lot of wealth managers. So, Bessemer, for instance, has a great program for running family weekends, and they're very, very good at it. The expertise of Banyan is first in what we call the owner room, which is how the owners make decisions together, because we think that's the essence of becoming a sustainable family business across generations. And to do that work, we often also need to and like to go into the family room and help the family assembly and the family council too.
Explain to me go ahead.
One thing about families and family businesses, we believe that family, I don't know about your family, Will, but I've got a crazy family. We only have I got a brother and a sister and a mom, and then all that comes with it, my wife and all of our kids. It's crazy. There's a lot of family stuff going on, and that's true of every business family. What we believe is that a business family doesn't have to love each other. You don't have to love your brother all the time to be a good business partner. You do need to make good business decisions together. So if communications breaks down and you just can't talk and make business decisions, that will spell the end, the doom of your family business. But loving each other all the time, that bar is too high. Sometimes our clients set a very high bar for what they expect their family to be able to do, and it's actually an unreasonable expectation.
You mentioned BCG's work a couple times, with family businesses. Talk to me a little bit about beyond your firm, and you have a substantial firm of 30 folks serving family businesses. Talk to me a little bit about the landscape of consulting to family businesses. Are there some firms, some of the larger global firms that have practices that specialize in that? Tell me a little bit about the landscape.
The landscape began as professors at top business schools saw this market or saw the family business and tried to figure it out. So you had at Kellogg a gentleman named John Ward, at Harvard, John Davis, at Yale, Yvonne Lonsberg. And they started this kind of boutique serving these family businesses. Two things about that. They started in the family room. They said, what's unique about a family business? The family stuff, the stuff we were talking about. Set up a family council, have a family assembly, make sure the family doesn't break the business apart. And they created firms around these people. So that's one part of the ecosystem of serving family businesses. On the other end of the spectrum, you have the big consultancy, PwC, Ernst & Young, BCG, and McKinsey all have practices that in one way or the other serve family businesses. We're kind of in the middle. Our specialty is really around, as I've said, these owners of family businesses. In that space, you'll have some of the legal firms doing some of the work. The issue with legal firms always is the same, of course, which is they have to be very clear who their client is. And they can't say, the family is my client. Usually they need either one person, a small group of people, or an entity. And as you have a next generation coming in, that client could be outside the scope of the lawyers. So that's a little bit of the landscape that we see out there.
So let's talk about your firm a little bit. I found it really interesting when we were chatting before we started recording, how you told me that you have this interesting kind of tripartite combination of talent. Talk to me about the folks that you have in your firm.
We have found, Will, over the years that there are three expertises, three disciplines, I guess, that we need to serve family businesses well. One is we really like former management consultants. And I was at BCG 17 years. I didn't know if I really learned anything, But in fact, I did. And one of the things I learned was how to work with clients, how to run processes that have deliverables. It's actually great expertise to have. And a lot of people who weren't there don't have that. We find that works very well with these very complex, very hyper political systems, which are called family businesses, to have people who understand how to run complex processes within a political system. At the same time, and our second source of talent that we need are people who know legal and tax issues very well. As we've said, ownership is a legal matter in many respects. You have to decide what kind of corporation, who's going to be an owner, what the shareholder agreement is, what the buy sell is. You can't fake that stuff. That's really important stuff. So on staff, we have, they call themselves recovering lawyers. We can't practice law, but they know the law very well. So we will do things like a term sheet that we will then work with the legal team the client has to make it into a shareholder agreement. And the third area is these are super complex systems, social systems. We have found that organizational behavior and organizational design PhDs are really almost necessary for us to do our work really well. So these would be, one of our founders is Marion McCollum Hampton. She's a PhD from Yale in organizational behavior. And she can see systems in ways that I was never trained in. So what we do when we go to market is we always have a team of people. Our perfect team is people from at least two of the disciplines. We have small teams, usually 2-3 people. We'll take a person, say a lawyer, next to an organizational design person, bring a very different look into these systems working together. We want our teams to be both genders, male and female if possible, because oftentimes, too often, these family businesses are dominated by the men, and part of our work is to give a voice to the women, and having a woman on our team is super important to do that. And the third dimension we try to have in each of our teams is both generations. I'm 59, so I'm pretty good with the 60, 70-year-olds, but we can't hire a 29-year-old MIT PhD to work with a patriarch who's 72 years old. But nor can I really relate that well to these 22-year-old next gen just coming into the business. So we typically like to have a partner who is, 50s, 60s, and what we call a principal, which are maybe in their 30s and 40s, so we can cover both generations in the family. So it's an interesting mix, and it's one of the, being CEO, it's been one of the great, joyful challenges is figuring out how to get, lawyers and organizational development people, or BCG consultants and organizational development people to work together. And if we can do it well, it's an amazing thing. The diversity of views we bring to the client can be great.
Give me an example of one of the kind of insights or one of the challenges that the organizational behavior team member would be looking at. Like, paint me a scenario. Yeah. Give me an example.
Yeah. The way I view it, and I'm not an organizational behaviorist, but the way I view it is the strength of that practice is the social system. So many times we'll be in a case team meeting talking about trying to move to a decision with a client, and we'll get bogged down. And our organizational development person will say, we need to helicopter up and talk about what's happening in this system and see if this is a system that we recognize. And maybe we'll go to that framework of, okay, sibling partnership going to cousin consortium. What would happen in a system like that? It's so striking, the sameness of family business systems around the world. If you're going from a sibling partnership to a cousin consortium and you're in Rio de Janeiro, you'll see very similar system dynamics going on in London or in New York, because siblings worldwide behave in a certain way, as do cousins. So an organizational behavior person will help us look at the systemic view of what's going on, both the sameness of it. I would actually stress the sameness of it is what they're so good at.
Yeah. Can you maybe think of a of an example of an actual client example, sanitize it obviously, and of some kind of issue that you were able to help unlock with that behavioral expertise on the team?
Let me think of one. So I'm going to go in quite a different direction. So this was one of my first clients, and it was to me it was so interesting because it was a Latin American textile manufacturer, three brothers who are owners, and so it's a sibling partnership. One was effectively the CEO, but they would never call him that because that would say he was the alpha. There was the head of manufacturing, and then there was the head of finance. They would fight like dogs. They would get into these rows where they wouldn't talk to each other for about a month after these fights. Now they're running this $100 million business. How the heck do you, I'm like from BCG, HBS, like classically trained. You can't run a company this way. And they're like, yes, we can. And we do run the company this way. It was interesting. The intercession that the behavioral person on our team gave us, and he went to something that we call appreciations. And this is how it happens. After a meeting, we're trying to work on some of the structural issues, like organizational structural issues in a company. And he says, okay, at the end of the meeting, we're going to do something. We're going to ask each of you to appreciate your brother for something he has brought to the business. And I'm like, or to you personally or to the business, just say something nice about the person. And these are people who do a lot of, really brotherly fighting. And they go, well, okay, we'll do this. So the senior brother, who always likes to be the first, he looked at his youngest brother and he said, I'm so proud to be in business with you. So in the meeting, there are these three, 6-year-old clients. There's two former BCG partners and this organizational development people, all guys, all crying because what this person was able to do was to go beyond the rational into the emotional system, pull it out in a positive way, and change the whole character of the relationship among these three men. You would never do this in a BCG client meeting. It would be super dangerous to play there because you don't know where it's going to go. This organizational development person knew what he was doing, knew how to bring out the emotion that was not being expressed in the system, and have the client himself put it on the table. It changed the dynamics of the ability for us to work with this client in a fundamental way.
Wow, that's a powerful story.
Thank you.
And when you are serving clients, you talked about how you're often serving the owners. What are, give me some of the examples of the types of, projects that you get pulled in on. Is it typically like long-term retainers, or are you brought in on more of a classic management consulting? We're doing a Salesforce transformation. We're doing an operational improvement. We're launching a product. We're entering India, whatever. Tell me a little bit about the nature of the kind of projects that you work on.
Good question. Well, our core offering, off which there are many things, but our core offering is a generational transition. So it is going from first to second to third. We had one client, I believe it was 21st to 22nd generation.
Wait, what? Wait a minute. Was it in Japan?
No, it wasn't. It was elsewhere. It was in Europe.
21st. Wait, 21st.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
always say now doing it 21 times, you should be pretty good at it. Yes.
21st. No, I won't ask for the name of the company, but can you share even what industry that is? Was that a hospitality?
There's so few, I'd rather not.
Oh, okay.
There's so few.
Right.
It'd be easily to identify.
21st generation. Holy smokes.
And we said, you're good at this already. Why do you need us?
Yeah.
And they said, it's the first time the senior generation has been in the shoes of giving away the company. And it's the first time the next generation is preparing itself to receive. So, and, it's like every 25 years you do a generational transition. Think about how much has changed in 25 years. They had so many spouses and the world has changed. So even if you've done it 21 times, it's not an easy thing to do. So our core offer is around a generational transition. And we do that in 3 stages. The first stage we just call, this is a little consultant-y, but we call it discovery. And what this is putting a mirror up to the family business system so that everyone sees the same family business system. So they understand what it takes to go from a sibling partnership to a cousin consortium, for instance. Here are the classic issues that you would see. Here's how we see them in your business. Would you agree? The output of this discovery phase, we call a owner decision roadmap. The art of our business is to say, these are the decisions we see in front of you, and this is the sequence of those decisions being made. Why this is important is in a family business system, there's often a lot of conflict, comes with the territory. Your job, our job as advisors, is to stretch the system like a rubber band so it's taut, but never break that rubber band and you're back. Because if conflict becomes too big, you're set back. You can set it back by months, if not years. So we, with the client, help them make the decisions as far as what to work on next. We believe the best way to bring family businesses together is to get people who have not worked together, working together on solvable problems to make progress and to build confidence in each other that they can handle the hard decisions that they clearly have in front of them. I don't know about your family, Will, but my family, like, what's for dinner? That's a hard question and a big decision. These families have decisions which are so big, should we shut down this factory that we've owned together for 40 years and Papa started? That's a hard decision. So helping them work through together these kind of decisions is what a roadmap does. The next phase is helping them through all those decisions, and that process can take years. A generational transition I expect to take, depending upon its complexity, 3 to 5 years. And the third phase, we call it just wellness care. There will be issues that will come up unexpectedly, like we have to fire 2 board members, and they may call us back in to help them do something like that.
To what degree do you kind of rely on your past, roster of clients to maybe occasionally introduce one client to say, hey, here's a past client of ours who handled something very similar. Why don't you talk to them and get their,
more and more we're learning that Banyan's learning, the best learning environments for family businesses are other family businesses who have worked on the same issue that they're working on. So it's very common in our practice to say, you're setting up, we're doing this with a client right now, you're setting up a board of advisors. It's your first board of advisors. We suggest that you talk to 4 of our clients who over the years have set up a board of advisors. None will be exactly like yours because their system is different, but you will often find them pulling 5 or 6 key insights that aren't just Banyan talking from the outside, but it's from a peer saying, here's how we handle this situation. It's really fundamental to giving them the knowledge base and the confidence to take the steps they need, and also to know none of them are perfect, neither they nor the other family businesses they've talked to. And we do this with, $100 million family businesses. We also do it with, multi-billion dollar family businesses because everyone has a lot to learn from each other.
I'm curious what other sorts of things you've tried or do regularly. Like, do you do any sort of annual or periodic, event where multiple clients might come together for some sort of, day-long set of seminars, or, any things like that your firm does?
I wish we did, is my quick answer. We've talked about it for years, and we get pulled back into our day-to-day client work. And other firms do some really good sharing among family businesses. And I think much of it is good, that they'll get together with peers. There's one conference I know in particular, they bring some of the best family businesses in the world together, and they talk about an issue that one of them is having, and they share, oh, here's what we did about it. And they have like 2 or 3 issues across a weekend that they deeply talked about. And I know the clients who come back from those conferences really feel energized that we're not alone. Others are facing similar issues, and they're solving them.
So, Rob, where can people go if they want to find out more about your firm?
Our website is banyan.global. There's no .com, it's just banyan.global. And in there, you'll find kind of some of what we talked about. The other thing we believe is this book that you mentioned, the Harvard Business Review Family Business Handbook, is the best expression of our practice right now. So, like what we've learned from our clients and from ourselves, but mostly from our clients, we've poured into this book, and it's the practices of some of the world's best family businesses as they struggle to kind of stay together, go across generations, deal with conflict, think about how to be responsible with their wealth. All of that's in there.
Fantastic. Well, we'll include that link to your firm in the show notes, as well as a link to the book, which once again is the Harvard Business Review Family Business Handbook: How to Build and Sustain a Successful, Enduring Enterprise. Rob, it's been a lot of fun speaking with you and hearing about serving family-owned businesses. Thanks so much for joining.
Well, thank you for your questions and your insights. I look forward to listening to more of your podcast.